So step 4 in this practical exercise is to create a user-defined function with the ID of the doctor being the input, the sole input to the function, and it returns this concatenated version of the doctor's name, right, with dr period at the beginning, okay, even though it's not actually stored in the database. By the way, I only just noticed that's a capital R. That was a typo, sorry. dr with a small r, right, is what I'm going to actually use. So this is similar to the one we did on Tuesday, right? I did find my code. So here is my UDF name that we did on Tuesday together. So let me just bring up, remember I can just script this as a create, and I can get back all the script that we wrote the other day, all my comments and everything else. Right, so this is the one we created then, and this was set up to pass in separately the first, middle, last name and have it concatenate either in formal or full name format. So this is a twist on that approach that we did. The one we're asked to do today in our exercise is strictly for the doctor. Okay, this is reusable across multiple tables. We just pass in the names. But this one, we're just going to pass in the ID of a given doctor and return the formal name special with the dr in front format for the one doctor. So I already have this one created in the system, but you know what? I can use this, reuse some of the code in here. So instead of just starting from scratch, I'll maybe just call this doctor name. That way, notice that I don't have to make it an alter because I'm actually creating a new function, giving it a new name anyway, right? Okay. Now the first, middle, last business, here I'm going to save some of that because it's going to come in handy later. When I declare variables down here, I'm going to be using it. It's going to complain until I get caught up to it, but I'll just cut and paste that there. Our one and only input parameter is just our doctor ID, or ID for short, right? At ID, and it is just an int in this database. So that's the only parameter we pass in. It's still a return of varchar, probably 85. Maybe I should bump it up to 90 because I'm adding a little bit of text. Okay, just to make sure it's big enough, although 85 I think would have done. All right, so we just have our one input. So when we define our local variables here, obviously I have to create variables to deal with or hold the first, middle, and last name, because instead of being given it as a parameter, we're going to have to go in and actually find out what those are for the specified doctor, specified by the actual input parameter. Okay, so I don't need commas here because these are separate lines. I'll still make this working variable, right, to hold it while I'm working out the expression to return, right? But I'm also going to create these as local variables to use internally. All right, so we're almost there. Now, I don't have to worry about this decision because we're always giving the name in a specified format. So the if structure can go. And I don't need any of the else stuff either. So I'll just take all that out. Okay, so after making the local variable to work with, I basically have to go get the values, right? And I need to actually go and retrieve. All I'm given is the ID of the doctor, so I have to find out what their first, middle, and last names are, right?
So did you drop build the expression?
I deleted the...
Yeah, okay, yeah, never mind.
Okay, all right. I'm going to reuse this to some degree, so that's why I didn't remove that code yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so going to get the value, so that'll be a simple select. So I'll get a start with my query editor, right? It's just from the doctor table, so just add that 1 to this. And I'm going to be pulling out the first, middle, and last, right? First, middle, initial, and last name. And I'll include ID. I'll check it off up here just so it comes down to the grid. I don't want it in the output, but eventually I'm going to be filtering for it. So I can just take ID, put at in front, and that helps me write my where clause. So it's a pretty simple select statement. Right? Selecting first name, middle initial, last name from doctor, where the ID matches my parameter. But of course, I don't really want to return data. I want to get those values and put them in here, right? So it'll be at first, or at F, I should say, equals first name, at M equals middle initial, and at L equals last name. Okay. Just refreshing my IntelliSense. There, all my underlining's gone. Okay, so far so good. I've got my doctor name. That's the function I'm going to create. My one input, the ID of the doctor, is an integer. I'm going to get these values, and then finally I'll set my return, my working variable, to this expression, right? Now, this is pretty close. The only thing is I do want to hard code a dr period at the beginning. So I can just type that in, dr period. And dr period space. And then the last name, then the first name, and then my is null handles the middle initial, right? So I'm reusing much of the expression I wrote the other day. I should probably have had a comment here. Work out the name expression. And then the last step is to return it and go for coffee. No problem. Okay, so I just return my variable at the name. So again, it's a twist on the, a twist on the function we did the other day, right? Where we just give the ID, find out the name, put it together the way we want. I'll execute that. Good. No syntax errors, so it created it. Just a quick test, just to show you with a function, we can just select, right? Select DBO dot, and there it is, UDF doctor name. Pass in, now of course I have to have an ID of a real doctor to get any meaningful data back. Doctor ID 1. So let me just execute that. And there we go. So see, I've got Dr. House Gregory A. That's exactly what our function called for. Just try a different one for fun. Okay, Xavier Charles. Okay, doctor. Good. So we're getting the results we wanted from our function. Okay. Any questions about that function? All right. So we're going to use that in the next step, and then we're going to wrap up this demo for today. Create a view named vPatient based on the patient table, includes the doctor name, right? So here's a chance to put into practice what we talked about the other day in terms of views that eagerly load information and are good for a client application. So I'll start a new query window. Might as well start fresh and clean. I'm still working in my medical office. And since it's going to be a select, I'll work out that first and then I'll save it as a view, right? It'll be just a select statement first of all. So following our rules we talked about, focusing on the patient table, first rule was include all the fields of the patient table. So I'll check that off. Here's my little trick, right? If I don't want to take time to check them all off one at a time, I just do that. When I bring it back into the editor, it converts it into an arrangement where all of them are individually checked. It just saves me going click, 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 click over and over again. Okay? And that's basically it. That's all I'm really going to get out of the tool. Not much more usefulness. Okay? So that just gives me all the fields. Now, if I think about it, do I have a good summary field here right now? Right? That was the next thing is, if necessary, create a summary property or summary field. Well, there's not one thing that all by itself gives me good indication of who the patient is. So maybe I could just make my own expression. I could use that other function we did for the name, come to think of it. But you know, for a one-off thing like this, there's nothing wrong with just writing a simple expression as well. So maybe I'm just going to make some space here. I often do that right near the beginning, my summary field. So I'll just use my concat function, perhaps. So we want to maybe start with, I don't know, do I want the last name first or the first name?
Last name first, you get last name.
Okay. All right. So we'll start with the last name. Sorry. Last name. And then after that, this is how concat works. You just comma separate all the things you want concatenated together. So then I'll put a comma space after the last name. Comma to go on to the next thing to concatenate on. And then the first name. I don't have to worry about a middle name. There is no such thing in the patient table, right? But, you know, that name is not necessarily enough because I might have generations of patients, right? So perhaps I would add on, I don't want to show the whole birth date, maybe just the year, okay? And that's where concat is nice because it looks after casting or converting data types, so I can just concatenate them together. So the next thing would maybe be, I don't know, I'm going to put like a space dash or something like that. And then the next one would be just the year of the date of birth. Okay, so that'll concatenate that together as a, no, I probably am not thinking clearly here, because this could be null, so I might end up with a dash at the end there if there's no date of birth, right? I probably should actually do this inside of an is null, but yeah, maybe I will. Might as well be complete. Okay, well, using is null, I'll have to do this. Oh no, that gets messy. Never mind. Zip, zip, undo. We'll live with that for now. Okay, that's an issue for another day. All right. So let me execute the select, see what I have so far. So I have my patient summary, okay, all the fields from the table, right? The only thing I'm not showing yet, my third point in creating a practical, useful view, is to include lookup data. Right now I've got, sure enough, the doctor ID here, but that's not very helpful, right? If I can't show the name of the doctor, I'll have to make a second trip back just to get that and show it on the screen for the client. Because of the way we just created that new function, I could use it, even without a join to the doctor table, because remember, it goes and looks up what it needs to from the doctor table, just knowing the ID of the doctor. And I have that here. It's in the patient table. It's the foreign key. So I can just call, oh, sorry, better put a comma so I can continue on. I'll just call my DBO dot doctor name, FNUDF. Oh, come on, IntelliSense. I guess I didn't Control-Shift-R. UDF doctor name. It didn't show up until I refreshed my cache. Okay, now there's only one parameter, the ID of the doctor. But guess what? I have that, right? That's that guy right there. As doctor. So I'm using the function to go get what it needs for the doctor table instead of having any kind of a join. Okay? I'm just selecting from patient, but it's magically going to sneak over to the doctor table, find out the full name of the doctor for me, because that's what the function does. Just thought I'd share an alternate approach to dealing with lookup information like that. And there we go. Okay, doctor, and nicely done, right? So we have the doctor column. Now this information we can't update, right? That's just lookup information being brought in. It's read-only in a sense, okay? But this information is what we're going to be manipulating if we actually do want to modify any of the data. So that's good. I'll just create a view. This as a view, create view. I think the instructions call for it to be v_patient as. And away we go. I'll just put a capital P there. Don't need that space. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go. And I can now select star from view patient. And I get all that data coming with the lookup values, the summary field, everything I might possibly need from the actual table itself. Okay. Now one thing I could mention is the updated information is optional. I could leave that out because the client won't necessarily care about that. It might want it, they might not. That could be a design decision, right? If they need to use it to display it on the screen somehow, then by all means include it. Otherwise, I'd be tempted to leave it out because that is all maintained on the server anyway. That's what we'll see in our stored procedures. Okay. So that's good. I'm not gonna worry about the procedures yet because we're gonna run out of time. We'll leave that for Monday possibly to actually make our standard stored procedures with this. But I did say I'd try to show you a practical use of this view. Okay. So in Visual Studio, I should stop recording and start again.